What's going on, guys? Welcome into the first episode of the StayWeighedIn show featuring myself, Abbas, and Ray, presented to you by Iboxinghub. That's right, guys. We are slowly moving away to a new platform known as Iboxinghub, but you'll still see myself, Abbas, and Ray with the same vibes. But let's go straight into it. How are you doing, man?
Yeah, doing all right, thank you, man. New year, new ventures, trying something new. So people, show love, support. Iboxing Hub, type that into YouTube. Follow the channel. Like I said, we're still gonna be here, but we're gonna be there as well. I'm gonna be migrating soon, so check it out. But other than that, man, life is life. In we keep on punching. How about yourself?
Listen, I'm with you, man. Like we said, new venture. We're excited to do it. We're going to be doing a host of new content as well. And just to little plug with the guys at iBoxing Up, they've got daily content as well, multiple different shows, multiple different presenters. So if you enjoy our work, you're going to love their work. So hit the subscribe button, and as Ray said, follow their socials. But let's get into it. It's 2024, a new year. We just had a fight happen between Better Biev and Smith, where Better Biev comfortably won. And it got me thinking 2024, it's always a thing where we want fantasy matchups, but also we want the fights we want to see. So for the first episode, we are going to go tit for tat, our top 5 fights that we want to see in 2024. So I'm going to go to you straight away. What's your number 5 fight that you want to see?
Number 5 fight: Crawford first, Jamel Charlo for whatever belts he's going to keep on. So obviously, it's a bit of a sticky one right now because Jamel's got a lot of legal troubles on his side. But once that's settled, and I'm praying and hoping, and I love Errol Spence, please let the rematch clause go. Let Crawford fight Jamel. And I want Jamel, even if they have a rematch at a later time, Errol, go get another belt at 154. And I want Terence Crawford versus Charlo to see him get the belt at 154 because I think that'll be an epic fight to have. So, and they've got the histories there dating back to obviously Crawford's win over Errol Spence. You saw the interaction between them on the All Access show as well. For me, the match is there. Make it ASAP, especially with Crawford getting older. I don't want him to be drawn out like age wise. So make the fight this year ASAP. What about yourself?
At number 5, so I'll just chat on yours quickly because I
Oh
know
yeah, so go. Apologies.
do you think with everything that's happened at 147 with Crawford, obviously we know what he did last year with that. Is there anybody at 147 right now that could potentially put a hindrance to this fight itself?
I know a lot of you are shouting Boots' his name. Cut the crap. Stop it. Crawford's done what he's needed to do at 147. Even I think he was saying, even though a lot of people were saying Errol Spence shouldn't have been at 147 for as long as he was, and he looked drawn out. The same thing with Crawford. He may not drop as much weight, but I think Crawford was also saying like, yeah, against 147 isn't like been nice for me either. He's done what he's needed to do. Boots is still unproven at 147. Let his build up his own thing. Obviously, I'm sure that he would want the fight with Crawford, but at this point in Crawford's career, it just don't make sense. Let Crawford be great at a higher weight class. And if he can do what he needs to do at 154 and make it look impressive, that Canelo fight might just materialize. Even though I don't think it's a good fight for him to take.
We've seen what happens when one guy at 154 goes up.
Yeah, it's not a good fight for him to take. But if he wants that big payday, that last big hurrah for the end of his career and wants a big challenge, hey man, why not? So that's yeah.
The first fight I've got at number 5, I'm going with Devin Haney versus Teofimo Lopez. Now, let me explain why I've got this. On paper, it might not be the big blockbuster one, but it is in some ways. This was a fight we were meant to have at 135. Undisputed, we were meant to have this particular fight. Cambosos Jr. that ruins the party, and then both guys kind of go their separate ways in the sense that Devin Haney does what he does at 135, and Teofimo Lopez moves up to 140, doesn't have that performance at the start, but then and then we all start questioning Teofimo Lopez. Has he still got it? What's happening? Then goes into, I always say this, we've said this before as well. Teofimo Lopez as a favorite doesn't seem to handle the pressure. But the second he goes in as an underdog or someone where maybe the public looks and say, has he still got it? Is he really that guy type of thing? He shows up. Fights against Josh Taylor. We've seen Josh Taylor go on the decline at 140, not necessarily as a fighter, but just naturally because I think his body can't make that weight anymore. Puts on a convincing performance. Now, with Devin Haney moving up, holding a title, with Teofimo Lopez holding a title, there's that interest back in there. Now, as much as people will say, and I'll touch on one other fight later on, there's bigger fish to fry potentially for Devin Haney in terms of the marketable side of this. When you look at this fight and how you can become unified champion, it kind of makes sense to happen in 2024. The only thing personally for me that's stopping it is maybe Haney has other ventures where he has other fights that bring more money in. And for Teofimo Lopez, we never know what type of Teofimo we're going to get. But I always say, when you have someone like Teofimo Lopez who's backed into a corner as an underdog, it brings out the best in him. So if a fight that I can't get at 135, I'm excited to see it at 140 still.
The timing and the order of this is brilliant, because I'm going to answer what you just said, but I was going to say at my number 4, I was going to say end of 2024, Haney versus Garcia. And the reason why my one slightly differs from Teofimo is only because I feel like with Haney, he's on the zone, Garcia's on the zone, and the way that a lot of the boxing politics is set up, I can imagine it'll be easier to set up a unification with Haney Garcia. If Haney gets it from Rolly, because obviously that's a big fight that's now, he, how would you say, changed the road that he was going to go on, because initially Garcia said he was coming for Haney, which I'd never believed it anyway. And then he outlined, no, do you know what? I changed my mind. I'm going to go down the Mayweather assisted Rolly.
I was going to say, he talked to Floyd. Floyd goes, keep the record, go get the easy belt.
And you know what's funny? Listen, people need to realize Floyd is not saying this as a friend. Floyd, from the best of my knowledge, if Floyd still promotes Rolly and Rolly's still under Mayweather promotion, Floyd's probably like, listen, that's easy money. Face Rolly, get your name up. Floyd still gets paid. Ryan potentially becomes world champion. And if that happens this year, then I say later this year, we can have Haney versus Garcia. I know Haney's got a mandatory that he's got to do. That probably, hopefully, for his sake, he's smart and doesn't put that on pay-per-view. And then maybe he might have one more, or he might just do that mandatory and wait for Garcia to, whenever that bout is between Rolly and Ryan, then they're probably going to have to face Barroso. The winner of that probably going to have to face Barroso. So I'm saying end of 2024, Haney versus Garcia. And then I think 2025 is when we get Haney versus Teo. If both sides come through the best. Because obviously on Teofima's bracket, you got the scary Matthias, who says he wants to fight. Teo said he's on it. I think Teo's going to face Jermaine Ortiz.
Yeah, he's got a fight in February, I believe, yeah.
And then he'll look to unify with Matthias. And if he's a man of his word, then I think 2025 we'll get Haney first Teo. But yeah, that's on my side. So what about your number 4?
And number 4,
yeah,
I want to complete the trilogy, and that's Katie Taylor, Chantel Cameron. The reason is basically, we've said this, I was tossing and turning between Serrano Taylor, Chantel Cameron Taylor, either or, because I just thought to myself, if there's a woman that's going to excite boxing fans, first and foremost, I think it's Katie Taylor. I think the one thing we've realized in the past 2 years, post-COVID, is if there's one thing that's on the rise, it's probably women's boxing. Now, they're not at that level of women's MMA, but they're getting there where they are the headline, and it's like, we want to watch them be the headline. And I think I think Katie Taylor's probably that marquee name. Obviously, nobody gets younger each year, and I think we all keep shouting for this particular stadium fight. If they build it the way they do, if Eddie goes and does what he can do, and we've touched on Eddie, if there's a guy that can market a fight better than anybody, it's Eddie Hearn.
Mm-hmm.
If you can get that stadium, then yeah, let's run this back one last time. The last two fights have been majority decisions. The last two fights have arguably been in that conversation of fight of the year caliber type of fights. So why not run it one more time and see what we can potentially do?
That's interesting because I'm thinking my only issue is obviously Serrano. I don't want that fight to run away because, like you said, both fighters are getting older. Serrano is doing things on her side, and I know she's got a sold out show, or a near sold out show in Puerto Rico. Hopefully, it sells out by the time that is the event comes. But it's like Serrano's not getting older; she's getting more challenges. Katie Taylor's not getting older, so what I hope, if Katie Taylor does face Cameron and manages to get through Cameron, then they need to do Katie Taylor Serrano end of this year, and then probably Katie Taylor will call it a day. I even think, even if Katie Taylor was to lose to Cameron,
Serrano's still open.
But I also then think if she was to lose to Cameron, that fight is not going to be in Ireland. That fight has to be in America.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think I'm not against that fight, Serrano, happening in America, because we saw what happened last time, the history of them being in MSG and stuff. So I'm not against that. What I'll say about this fight that draws me in is both fights have got majority decisions. So there's always that, okay, who's going to get that unanimous decision? Just like the way, in some ways, when Floyd fought Maidana, for example, it was like Floyd would, but we had question marks. So he had to match type of thing.
He had to make it more clearer,
Make it more clear. Can we get something clear on? If we can, then it settles it to a point, even though it's not anything it holds value in terms of it being settled, but again, it doesn't ruin the legacy of Katie Taylor in some capacity, if that makes sense.
They must be so sick of each other at this point.
Hey, listen, if
like,
the money...
I would... No, don't get me wrong. I'm sure the money's good, but they're probably thinking at the same time, I am sick and tired of thinking about this person in training camp. Like, you must just want to be like, leave me alone. And the worst thing is, neither of them have knockout power to try and like just end it early and just go for the gusto. So it's like knowing that you probably have to go another 10 rounds with the same person must just be so annoying. But that's how it go.
Let's go into your top three then. What's your at number 3?
There's a span in the works due to, His Excellency. Big spanner in the works. However, I still think hopefully all goes down this route. Joshua versus Fury, end of 2024, Wembley Stadium.
You know what? I think you don't have to say much about that fight. You just say the names and we know it. But what, in terms of the spanner in the works, then what could that potentially be for you that stops it?
The spanner in the works, I think this only goes down if it goes down this way. Obviously, AJ needs to go for Ngannou, which I think he will and he should. And it will hurt me because I'm rooting for Ngannou, but at least he's getting a bag. Then Usyk actually needs to win first Fury. I'm rooting for him anyway, but Usyk needs to win against Fury. And I'm sure everyone knows about the whole IBF situation, that if whoever wins it is probably going to drop the IBF belt because they've requested a mandatory on a short turnaround. Then obviously it looks like it's going to be Joshua versus Hrgovic for the IBF, since they're basically the two number one contenders for that belt. So Joshua becomes 3-time champ, and if Fury's coming off a loss to Usyk, there's so much money in Fury versus AJ end the year. I know there's rematch clause in the Usyk versus Fury. Depending on if he takes it, we'll find out. I hope that he doesn't. I hope that it's just like F it. If Usyk wins, F it, and then make AJ first Fury. Because if not now, then it's never gonna happen. And I don't want a Kell Brook / Khan situation where we waited too long. So please, 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 end the year. Give me Fury first Joshua.
Do you know what? For my number 3, and this is what could potentially make this guy fighter of the year for me if he does this, and that's Devin Haney versus Tank Davis. Now, when I talk fantasy, this is where like the other two can be more realistic. It seems like more of a fantasy fight. You have to ask, okay, to people, what fight would you want Devin Haney to get? A lot of them will probably just go out and say, we want Javante Davis. We want Javante Davis. And I think for me, even though Tank doesn't hold a belt or a real belt, you could say, it doesn't really matter because we've talked about pay-per-view stars and who's the next real marquee pay-per-view guy. And we probably, if we both look at it, it's probably going to be Davis in terms of what he can bring compared to the others. And I think he brings that. And then you've got Devin Haney who brings himself, but alongside that, brings the title. And you're like, okay, let's see what we can do. My only backtrack on this is, as much as Tank is what he is and he's got knockout power, how much of that knockout power really can translate to the higher caliber fighters at 140? And that's probably my little stumbling block because don't get me wrong, I think at 140 he'll still be able to knock out certain level of opponents, but can he make that transition to fight something like Devin Haney straight away? I don't 100% know, but if that fight was to occur, I'd be all in. But I'd be all in probably for the wrong reasons, if that makes sense. I'm just in for the showmanship of it rather than it being a fight.
Do you know what? I think the juice is running out on Tank Davis in regards to sooner or later. Funnily enough, that choice is in my honorary mentions, but sooner enough, Tank has to face a formidable opponent. You can't keep him getting away with like what he's been doing. And yes, he's a pay-per-view. I'll give him, he's a pay-per-view star, but he could be a superstar. As much as he tries to do the whole thing of, oh, I don't need a world title to validate. And it's just like, you do. You don't need to be undisputed to validate you, but you need to at least be a actual certified world champion at lightweight at some point. You can't keep on getting away with the Reggie belt. It is what it is. So I think because sooner or later, people are just going to be like, yo, why am I paying to watch you face Isaac Cruz again? Or why am I paying you to watch you? I don't know who else is there for him to fight at this point. There isn't anyone.
There is this is where it gets a bit funny because I always say this, and it's not because it's the way boxing is that confuses people who are trying to get into boxing. If you see Tank with a belt and it says WBA regular champion, the assumption is he's a champion, and he is, but he's not the main guy. And I think that's also a boxing problem that allows people to get away with it, to say, oh no, he's a world champion.
Do you know the worst thing is because of the optics? I speak to casuals and they'll be like, wait, he's not a world champion. I'm like, no. And then for them, they haven't got a Scooby. They don't have a clue. To them, it's just like, in their mind, they see a belt, Tank's world champion at 135. And I'm just like, that's why he kind of gets away with it, even though he jokingly says, I don't want a world title, but you still carry the Reggie belt. It makes no sense. You can't keep on saying, I don't care about belts, but then you carry it. I don't, it's a whole bunch of hoopla, but we move.
Let's go. Do you know what? Because we've not heard, I'm guessing our top two are going to have the same fights, but it'll be interesting if we've got them in the same order. So what's your number 2?
Canelo versus Benavidez.
Nah, I've got him number 1, but nah, talk to me.
All right, cool. Canelo versus Benavidez. It needs to happen ASAP. And I know Canelo, for whatever reason, wants to try to do it September instead of May. I don't understand the logistics for that. I really don't, because especially after the year that Benavidez had. There's no more momentum for Benavidez. There's no one else that Benavidez needs to beat or can beat at this point that's going to give you more momentum commercial wise. There just isn't. You just have to pull the trigger now, especially the fact that apparently they was gonna suggest Canelo versus Munguia, and I'm just like, brother, stop taking the piss.
We don't need that DAZN little. Nah,
No one
we don't need
cares.
DAZN little. Here you go type of thing. Let's promote.
Nobody. Oh my! If there's a like, Benavidez needs to be in the media more putting it on Canelo, because I get Benavidez' point as well though, because I think Benavidez' side is just like, I've done everything I need to do. I can't keep on begging this man. If you don't want to fight, then so be it. But at the same time, I think that's what he should be marketing, the fact that Canelo is running away. Is that fine line, because you don't want to come across as you're begging. At the same time, that is the fight to make. And I'm sure for him, that's also the money fight to make. But like I said, it's that fine line of, I'm not going to go out there and beg. At the same time, it is a case of, what more do you need me to do? He beat Plant. He beat Andrade. There's literally no one else left at light heavy. At super middleweight, and him teasing going up to light heavyweight is just like, let it go.
Now me being the Canelo guy that I can say that they could want it in September is because when this fight happens, because some people like to throw this agenda around that Canelo's ducking. I don't think he is. I don't think Canelo at 60 fights ducks anybody.
I don't know what the word is. It's not ducking, but it's just like, you are drawing him out in a way that's not looking good. I don't think he's shook of him, but yeah, the whole weird thing of like not fighting him in May. My thing is more like, what is the significance? Is fighting him in September going to bring any more significance than fighting him in May? And if it's not, then what is the point? Fight him now.
I don't necessarily think it's significance, but I think it's, when you've got something, you can stretch it out. And because if he fights him in May, I get it. I get your point.
It's nasty.
Him in May, beats him in May. What does he do in September?
Crawford.
Oh my God. We can't have these little.
No, do you know what? Yeah, even if he faces Benavidez in May, yeah, then you can have whatever silly Munguia fight that you want. Have it in September. No one's gonna care because you beat Benavidez.
That's the thing.
After you beat Benavidez, that's when you can at least be like, all right, cool.
No, but you've said my thing. You've said my thing. Nobody will care because he's done what he needs to do. If I get it, because Cinco de Mayo is in May, you do the May celebration for Canelo, let him have his little toy-up fight. Yeah. Then in September, you still have the attraction of, we're doing Benavidez. And I said this before.
It's too... Do you know what? Because... I'll let you finish your point. Only because my number one fight, we're going to have to wait for a bit. And that has more understanding. But there's certain fights where it's just like, this doesn't have to wait. I think that's what the issue with this Canelo not facing Benavidez in May is, that there's a lot of other fights where logistics are like, okay, you're going to have to wait. Like even like Haney Garcia or Haney Teofimo or Teofimo versus Matias. It's like there's reasons why you have to wait. There's logistics reasons. This is one of the very few times where it's just like, logistically, you do not have to wait for this. You just don't. Like there's no actual logical reason why you need to do that. But sorry, you were saying.
Yeah, I was just saying, for me, the only way I can look at it is if you can stretch something out. And again, this comes back to the pain of boxing at times. But if you stretch it out, and you know it's going to happen, it's just a case of when, and that I fight twice a year, but I can make it in September. I don't necessarily have too much of an issue with it. I do have an issue with it if we go into 2025 and we're still talking about it. But the reason I have that as my number one, and not what we're going to talk about next, is because I'm tired of people still disrespecting Canelo. And I say this because there will be legitimate people who will look to say, he's scared of Benavidez. He can't beat Benavidez. Win, lose, or draw, he's carried the sport
Oh yeah.
that nobody else. So he is allowed to. It's the same way I talk about when it comes to certain things like football. If Man City don't win the Premier League, they've not failed because they've won 3 in a row. If
Yeah.
Canelo was to lose to Benavides, it's not a failure in the sense of what
Oh
he's.
no. It's not a failure, but at the same time,
It
like I
hurt.
said, the optics, it's not even losing. The optics right now looks bad on you if you stretch out. If you stretch out and then lose, it looks even worse because now it looks like, oh, you was definitely ducking him. Whereas if you face him in May and you lose, it's like, all right, cool. Do the rematch in Mexican Independence.
You've got the rematch element of it. What I will say is, and Canelo's, I personally think as well, there is a bit of pressure on Benavides.
Mm-hmm.
But Benavides, anyone who faces Canelo's playing with what we call as house money. You
Oh
win
yeah, for sure.
the apple card. If you lose, you're like 62 other guys you've lost as
Yeah,
well.
that's a
Canelo
crazy amount, boy.
is. So again, all the pressure goes on Canelo. So it's easy to call out the man, but can you actually be the man? And you can't. Shout out to Ric Flair. To be the man, you got to beat the man.
Woo!
Nobody. Bivol is the man at where we're going to talk about. We'll touch on that now. But nobody's been the man at Canelo's weight at 168. Like nobody's touched him. Nobody's got close. That's why I still have that as my number one fight. But because they're both interchangeable, let's go to that fight that we're talking about. So I'll let you take the fall first.
What? Oh, for number one on my side.
Yeah.
Number one on my side was to do with the man they call Arthur Beterbiev. First, Dimitri Bivol. Now is the time, the year to finally do undisputed at light heavyweight. And my guy Arthur, even though I like Matcham, I like Eddie and all the people there, they are doing some of the most nastiest excuse making that I've seen in a while. The whole trying to talk about how Arthur's doing whatever. Let's get one thing straight. And I like Arthur's response to one of the reporters' questions when they ask him, how does he stay in shape at this age? His level of discipline, even if you done PEDs, you still need to be disciplined. I think that's what I don't like about it as well, because people make it imply like, oh, it's just PEDs. Like, no. Even on PEDs, you can still get whooped. My man said himself, he's so disciplined, he doesn't drink, he doesn't balloon up in weight, which a lot of other great fighters have done. And then you wonder why your career cut short. I say all the time, there's a great in like Ricky Hatton that we saw how he dealt with lifestyle wise, and even himself has criticized how he lived outside of training camp. But you got someone like Arthur who's on the opposite end who respects the craft like a Terence Crawford is as well, or even like how Bernard Hopkins, that's my OG. This guy was so disciplined, he went on to fight until what, 49 or something. There's a certain discipline that certain fighters have that gives them longevity, and I believe that Arthur is one of those people. So he's applied himself so well that he's been able to reserve his body for a long time. And before Father Time catches him up, I want that fight to happen. Now I know some people, His Excellency wants it in Riyadh, where it's going to be the most money, and I think that's the only way it will happen, because Aram and Eddie are not going to work well together unless there's someone who's going to give the bag. But with Ramadan coming up, with March maybe being too quick a turnaround in regards to another training camp for another fighter, I feel like it will be at the beginning of the next Riyadh season, which is, what is it, October?
But yeah.
October. So I think October is when the fight will happen. It'll be a shame that Art has to wait that long, but such is life. But I'd rather him going to the fight having full training camp, full-time recovery, no excuses, than if they do a quick turnaround in March and then, you know, him being like, him or someone in his camp being like, oh yeah, he didn't have enough time to recover, or he didn't have like the training camp he would have liked. And it would have been viable as well. Some people might say it's an excuse, but it would be viable to say, That's the truth, because it reminds me of when UFC done Aljamain Sterling Day when he had just won a match, and then it was like 5 round fight that he had against Henry Cejudo. They know he cuts a lot of weight, and they made him do a quick turnaround to face Sean O'Malley, and it was just like, that's nasty business. So I don't want that, especially for a fight this important. Give them the proper time. Maybe Bivol can take one more mandatory in between just to keep himself sharp, and then make that fight in the year. It has to happen now.
Do you know what? In terms of just the fight itself, I think you kind of said it. I think when you look at 2024, we've got the heavyweight title fight that we've all been calling for. And I think now, in terms of just that peak interest in terms of belts, that's the next one. We've had it at 147 in 2023 that we wanted. So I think you're right. Like I'm all in for it, and I think the time frame you've highlighted as well works. Funny enough, you mentioned about the Riyadh season, and Joshua and Fury was one of your things. I don't think we'll see that at Wembley. I think if anybody can put it together and put the money in, let we run it back in December potentially type of thing. I know it's long.
No, that's not the issue. I don't know if a fight that big and British. You know what? If the bag is there, they'll do it.
They'll do it in Saudi.
Yeah, I was gonna say that there's no way, but listen, man, money talks, man. If there's enough money that the Saudis put up, there'll be like Wembley Stadium where let's do this in Saudi. It'll be a shame that it doesn't happen in Britain, but money has to make.
Let's just quickly touch on. You said honourable mention. Then what would be your one honourable mention before we wrap up?
I can't lie. I've got 2 honourable mentions, but they're not actually fights. One honourable mention. I need Chris Eubank Jr. to get a world title this year. Please, I just need to see Chris Eubank as world champion. It has to happen. It will be some of the greatest promo that we've ever seen. I need to see Chris Eubank Jr. as a world champion. It has to happen. I don't know what's going on with his team, because I know that he's mandatory in some of the boxing organizations, or he's number one at least. Chris Eubank Jr. needs to have a world title shot this year, and God willing, with Bomac, he finally accomplishes that. And the promo is going to be amazing. I cannot, if he manages to pull this off, I cannot wait. So yeah, that's one thing. The second thing is something that we mentioned earlier on. Tank to face a formidable opponent, whether that's being Devin Haney, which I don't think he'll do at 140, or whether that is Shakur Stevenson at 135. Tank needs to fight a formidable opponent. Enough is enough. I've liked what he's done with his career up to this point, making yourself as big as he is without having a legit title of 135. But this has to be the year that we demand him to put. It's almost like that footballer. This is bad, and I like this guy. He had a good career, but he's still one of the biggest what ifs. We need to find out if this is going to be Theo Walcott settings. Are you going to fulfill the potential, or are you going to be the guy where everyone's going to be like, he was good, but he could have been great if he zigged when he could have zagged. So I think this is the year where Tank needs to show, are you really the guy? And that's Shakur, whether it's Shakur or whether it's, I don't know, no one else come to my mind at lightweight, but yeah, he needs to face someone formidable, because enough is enough. You can't do the Hector Garcia when you've got a blown up 130-pounder. You can't do Ryan Garcia with a, rehydration clause. No, legitimate 135-pounder fight, legitimate world title on the line. And then whether his first match in the year, he gets a super belt, actual belt, and then the end of the year, he faces Shakur. But enough is enough. We need to demand more from Tank. So those are my honorable mentions.
Do you know what? Before I'm going to put mine in, it's in a different space. Yeah. You know, I don't mind the influencer boxing. So we've talked about fights that borderline have been taking ages to be made and stuff like that. This is probably going to be the impossible fight. But if it happens, I don't care what country it's in. Actually, I do care because I'm not leaving the UK. I'm not leaving the UK. Let me.
I'm waiting for you to land. If this is what I think it is, but go on.
We need KSI versus Jake Paul. If you are in London,
absolutely,
I will go there. I do not mind.
Absolutely.
I travel anywhere in the UK for that particular fight, because that is basically the impossible fight. But at the same time, if they make it, it completes for me that chapter of influencer boxing. Like they're doing what they are doing, and credit to them. Like we said before, they sell out wherever they go, or they sell out in a smart way where they don't open the full arena, but they allow levels, which is fine in itself. And then secondly, just keeping on with Jake, I'm also interested to see what he does in 2024. Like I think he wants to be on the undercard for Amanda Serrano. Look.
Listen, one thing I gotta respect Jake Paul, the way that he has backed Amanda Serrano and uplifted her career needs to be spoken about and commended more, because at a time of women boxing needs all the push it can get. He has put the machine behind Serrano, and I respect that.
But yeah, so I want to see what he does. Obviously, like I said, I've got the fight that I want, but if he wants to do the quote unquote real route and do fighters, regardless of whatever people think about their records, because they'll be scrutinized regardless, and that's fair enough. But I always say, look at your favorite fighter and look at the records they fought when they've in their first 5 or 6 opponents, and then come back to me. But yeah, if you're gonna give him an honorable mention, I want to see KSI versus Jake Paul some way, shape, or form in 2024.
At this point, I fully agree in the fact that for me, there's nowhere else for KSI to go in regards to a big enough name to make it worthwhile to watch his boxing events. And two, like you said, this is the culmination of influencer boxing. And I think for them to turn a corner and move on with both of it, because I think even Jake Paul's starting to lose a bit of juice with the whole influencer thing. So I think them two just need to hurry up, collide, and they can both call it a day after this. Jake Paul might go on to do other things.
Jake continues. I think Jake personally continues, but if he needs to get this out of his system type of thing.
I think he needs to put a nail in the coffin with this whole KSI Jake Paul situation. I've got a feeling KSI probably going to take one more fight just to get another win, and then the Jake Paul fight is going to happen. For influencer boxing, I think it needs to happen. I like influencer boxing. I hope they do it properly, because one thing I do appreciate about influencer boxing, is it messy? Absolutely. Can these guys fight? Majority of them, absolutely no. But the fact they're taking the sport serious, whether you like the level or not, they're taking it very seriously. And I like the fact that it's showing people, listen, man, this is a healthier way to sort stuff out. You're seeing all these people talk rubbish on the internet. It's like, come, meet up in the boxing ring. And I respect that so much. In a time when people think they can fight and they can't, I like the fact that it's like, nah, if you think you can train, let's go to a boxing ring. Because there's so many people out there that think they can fight and they can't. So guess what? I like the whole thing of, if you're bad, come meet me in the boxing ring. And I like that. So hopefully that comes to fruition. Hold up, wait, did you say your second fight? Remember you said our number ones are interchangeable. Our number one
so my number one would have been Canelo Benavidez, but basically we touched on both of them. But either way, it doesn't matter too much. I just had Canelo because I think he's the biggest star in boxing, and I felt like in 2023, in a weird way, he kind of went under the radar because there were other fighters that maybe
those bigger fights, those more anticipated fights. But to be fair, Canelo, most importantly, just reminded people, I'm still Canelo.
Yeah.
But wait, no. So what was your number two then?
My number two would have been Bivol and Beterbiev.
Okay.
And then one would have been Canelo.
Okay, yeah. So, fair enough.
We're gonna wrap up the first episode of the StayWeighedIn show. as we said right at the start, we are now migrating over to Iboxinghub. So guys, go subscribe to their channel, follow all their socials. We're going to be putting this out there every Tuesday, 7:30. Every Tuesday, 7 to 7:30. But it will be there, and we want to get your comments in there as well. So let us know your top 5 fights that you want to see. Do you agree with our choices? Do you not? And until next time, guys, stay weighed in.
Stay weighed in.